evening, San Ramon. This is C1 News on Channel 14. I'm Alana Schreiber, and here's Emma Tyrrell. This evening, we are going to give you the scoop on the Western Front. As you can see, the Allies and the Central Powers are fighting along the northern region of France. This front is 475 miles. The Allies are on the left side, while the Central Powers are on the right side. Now I'm going to bring your attention to the trenches where the men live. In early 1915, both sides stopped warfare to create a new fighting technique called trench warfare. The trenches were dug out from the ground and are about 8 feet deep. Now let's get an overview of what a trench looks like. They were built for enemy protection from the fire, but I'm about to unveil the truth about trenches. Men go over the top into no man's land, which is the area between the trenches. There is barbed wire and constant firing, which makes it difficult for men to go over the top. Since the soldiers do not go into no man's land, often there is a deadlock or a stalemate, meaning that neither side is able to gain territory. Now I'm going to inform you on the conditions of the trenches. The men sleep, bathe, use the bathroom, eat, and live in the trenches. There is constantly about a foot of water in the trenches, which causes a muddy mess for these men. One soldier said, "The men sleep in mud, wash in mud, eat in mud, and dream in mud." Some soldiers drown in the water. After, their bodies stay in the trench, forever decomposing. Not only is there mud and water, there is the soldiers' feces inside the trenches. This is because the trench is the only secure place for a soldier to go to the bathroom. This causes many diseases to spread, and the soldiers die from this. It also attracts flies, who are harmful and annoying to the soldiers. Other critters that inhabit the trenches are rats and lice. There are millions of rats that infest the trenches. Rats don't seem that bad when you're here, but in the trenches, the rats can be up to the size of a cat. They feed on the dead soldiers' bodies. This causes many men to be frightened by these giant rodents, who also scamper across the men's faces in the dark, which causes the men to get a lot of lack of sleep. They also do not sleep because they are on constant watch for enemy fire. Now, as I mentioned before, there is also a lice problem. The lice breed and live in the filthy hair and clothing of these men, causing an extreme itch for them. It is reported that these pesky bugs cannot be demolished. They continue to come back after delousing because the eggs hatch inside the soldiers' clothes. Not only do the men itch, but they contract diseases from the lice. Earlier I talked about the constant water. This isn't just annoying, it is also dangerous for these men. The soldiers who have cold, wet, and unsanitary shoes commonly develop trench foot, a fungal infection of the feet. If not treated, trench foot turns gangrenous and results in amputation. The last condition of the trenches I'd like to talk about is the potent smell. This is caused by the rotting carcasses, the men not having baths, poison gas, stagnant mud, cigarette smoke, and cooking food. All of these components make a powerful, pungent smell that overpowers the nostrils. Now you know the truth about the trenches. This evening, we are grateful enough to have our own Erin Christopherson do an interview on the Western Front. So without further ado, here's Erin on the Western Front interviewing a soldier from the Battle of Verdun. Erin?
We are here on location in Verdun with a soldier who recently fought in the Battle of Verdun. The battle here lasted for 5 months. It was one of the longest and deadliest battles thus far. There were major casualties on both sides. So, soldier, how did you feel your side did?
Well, reporter, at first we were caught by surprise, and those filthy Germans got ahead of us. But in the end, we are far superior to the Germans, and are much smarter than the Central Powers. Naturally, we took the lead in the battle. Even though we had more casualties than the Germans, our army stayed strong and took more land in the end. This truly proves that the Allied forces are far superior to the Central forces.
How did you personally take part in the battle?
I played a very big part in taking back Fort Bow from the Germans. I have always been in the front line with the most fearless of soldiers. After we gained back Fort Vaux, I helped General Haig plan and lead several attacks on German forts, including the attack at Artois. Even though we suffered a loss, we got a strong point across to the Central forces.
How exactly did this battle start?
Well, the Germans attacked us at Verdun, a city very close to our heart. They caught us by surprise because we already had so many forces and it was very well protected. Because of this surprise, we were not able to fight back to the fullest degree, and they took over our forts. Since we were obviously enraged by this attack, we decided to attack several of their forts on the Western Front. These attacks escalated to a full battle that lasted for 5 months.
What do you think is next for your troops?
I think that there will be many more battles and wins in store for us. Word is that some of our soldiers will be being moved to the Battle of Somme. One thing I know for sure is that there will be many more wins for us.
How is the morale for your troops after you've been fighting for all those months?
At the beginning of the war, there was not much fighting, mostly just waiting around and hoping that you wouldn't have to go over the top. When the battle began, the soldiers finally started feeling like they were actually soldiers. The morale was quite high, and everyone wanted to be involved. After a few months went by, the morale became lower and lower. Being in one of the most violent and intense wars in the world was not what the soldiers were expecting either. So towards the end of the war, the morale became very, very low. But we boosted their spirits by giving them playing cards and making them listen to very happy music.
Thank you for giving us a genuine view from the battle. Now back to Alana in the studio.
Thanks, Erin. That was very insightful. Now here's Emma with the Battle of Somme. Emma, take it away.
Thanks, Alana. This evening I'll be talking about the Battle of Somme. This battle was with the German and British troops and took place in summer to late fall in 1916 on the Western Front. This war took place in 4 phases. The British had continuous artillery fire on the Germans for 1 week straight. The goal of the British was to demolish the barbed wire on the German front line, but this attack proved to be ineffective. The second phase was a German infantry attack, where they used the sheer power of their force and their mass number of troops. The British troops went over the top of the trenches like this and ran across no man's land, while the Germans' artillery fire annihilated them. There were 120,000 casualties, including 20,000 dead and 40,000 missing, wounded, or prisoners of war. The next phase was the first time tanks were used in battle. The Allies used tanks that moved so slowly that the Germans could pick them off easily, and many of the tanks broke down in no man's land. The final phase was yet another failed Allied attack. And after this final phase, the Battle of Somme started to slowly wind down. In total, there was over 1 million casualties, and 60% of those casualties were Allied soldiers. On the upside of this battle, Britain won 7.5 miles of land, also known as 12 kilometers. But Germany did have the lesser numbers of casualties at the end. Thanks for listening, and back to you, Alana.
Thanks, Emma. I sure learned a lot about the Battle of Somme. Thank you for joining us this Thursday evening. Tune in tomorrow for the next exclusive information on the Great War.
Alana and I are now signing off on C1 News on Channel 14. Thanks for watching.